Hello and welcome to the Learning Love Podcast, brought to you by the Learning Love Foundation, helping people transform how they love, live, and lead. I'm your host, Dr. Mark A. Hicks, and I want to thank you for joining us today as we spend some time learning love. Love is the answer. Now all we have to do is explore all the questions. And as I'm exploring all the questions, I've developed a little bit of a hobby, I suppose. Every now and then, if I have a few minutes and I just have a curiosity, I have developed this pattern of going on to the AI and asking some profound question, some just, obscure, profound thing just to see what it says. Sometimes it says something pretty cool. Sometimes it says something silly. You get a lot of different responses. But there was one question and one response that I thought, I want to share this one. I asked the AI, what is the greatest moment in human history? The greatest moment ever. Because I know we could debate that. Depending on your view of history, maybe your religious background, maybe your cultural background, we all may have a different answer to that. So I was really curious what the AI would say is the greatest moment in human history. And this is what it brought back. The greatest moment in human history is not behind us. It is the moment we finally decide that love, wisdom, and cooperation are worth more than dominance, fear, and division, and we act accordingly. And I thought that last phrase was probably the most important, because I think most people would say, well, sure, yeah, love and wisdom and cooperation are certainly worth more than dominance and fear and division. We would say that, but we don't act accordingly. We don't really believe it enough to act on it, because we tend to act on our fears. We tend to have a lot of power struggles. That's what dominance is about, these power struggles. And we tend to create a lot of divisions between us, whether it's politically or in a family or in a company or any other thing. We tend to divide ourselves up, not based on cooperation and wisdom and love, but based on sometimes prejudice or routines or the way we've always done it or whatever it might be. We don't always act accordingly. But according to this, and I have come to agree, the greatest moment in human history is that point where we reach the conclusion and decide that love, wisdom, and cooperation are worth more than dominance, fear, and division, and we act accordingly. That got me thinking that we could read this differently. We could apply this different ways. Let me read this a little different way. The greatest moment in a family is when that family finally decides that love, wisdom, and cooperation are worth more than dominance, fear, and division, and they act accordingly. How many dysfunctional families do we have out there? How many families work on the principles of dominance, power structures, power plays? How many families are working on the principles of fear, that you better do as you're told or else? And that doesn't mean that there aren't consequences, particularly with children that disobey. Obviously, there has to be reasonable consequences for small children as we're teaching them and guiding them. But that's not necessarily based in fear. That's based in guidance. So many times our families are divided up. This group is taking on that group. That we're working on these people that are in the middle, trying to get them to our side of the argument, get them to align with us against that person within the family. There's a lot of family dynamics that triangulate, that pull this person into the argument against that other person in order to have their support, not because we're right, but because we find a way to manipulate them in order to win the argument, in order to dominate. Many families are dealing with dominance, fear, division, and the greatest moment in those families is when we decide it's not worth it, that love, wisdom, and cooperation are worth more than dominance, fear, and division. We act accordingly. Let me try again. The greatest moment in an organization is when love, wisdom, and cooperation are worth more than dominance, fear, and division, and they act accordingly. How many times do we go into unhealthy workplaces, dysfunctional workplaces, where there is division and dominance and fear and manipulation? How many places operate in those kinds of environments and then wonder, why can't we keep employees? Why is our retention rate so low? Why is morale so low? What would happen in companies, in organizations, if they finally decide that love, wisdom, and cooperation are worth more than dominance, fear, and division? You can get people to do what you want by making them afraid. You can make people do what you want through dominance. You can make people perhaps work harder, at least in the short term, by dividing them against each other and pitting them against one another in some sort of competition. But most of that short term. People burn out very quickly on those kinds of things. When we are working together in cooperation because it works, we have wisdom. We know what we're doing. We have the wisdom of knowing what works, and we cooperate together, and we do it because we love it. That's sustainable. People don't burn out in jobs where they have cooperation, working together in a way that actually really works because they have the wisdom to know how to do the job, and they love what they do. The morale's high. People don't burn out. Retention rates are much better. What would happen if a church decides that love, wisdom, and cooperation are worth more than dominance, fear, and division, and act accordingly? What would happen if a government decided that love, wisdom, and cooperation are worth more than dominance, fear, and division, and act accordingly? Now I'm just getting crazy, right? Can we really expect governments to act this way? Yes, we absolutely can, because the government is all of us. Our churches, our organizations, our businesses, our neighborhoods, they are made up of us. Our families are made up of us. And if we get this, if we start to live this way and see this as our greatest moment, then we have the ability to create that. Understand, I'm not talking about utopia. I don't believe utopia exists. Always going to have problems. But love gives us the ability to address those problems to build a better life. And that's what I'm talking about. That love and wisdom and cooperation don't create a world where no problems exist. It creates a world where we have a way of addressing the problems that we have to build a better life. Problems will still exist, but we'll have a way to not be overwhelmed by them. Love and wisdom and cooperation are the way that we actually address them to build a better life despite the problems. And so, how can we realistically start to believe that this can exist, that we can do this, that we can find ways of actually believing in this and acting accordingly, believing that love and wisdom and cooperation are worth more than dominance and fear and division, that we can actually act on this? There's some real reasons, some practical reasons why I believe that this can happen, not only in society, but because of it happening in families and in neighborhoods and in businesses that lead to the change in society. There's some reasons why this is realistic. One is the evolution of societies tends to favor connection over strength. We look at people that are strong and powerful, and we think they're going to dominate. But in reality, over time, connection tends to win out more than actual strength, more than just raw power. A good example of this that a lot of people have lived out, at least in their childhood, is in sports. If you played team sports, you've probably seen this happen. Think about a team that has great athletes, but they're selfish. They're playing for themselves. They're individualistic. They don't really cooperate. They have divisions in the team. The locker room doesn't have morale. The locker room is a place of division, but they have great athletes. They're the stronger team as far as physical ability. But then you have another team that has cohesion, that has love for one another. They've got each other's backs. They play hard for one another. They have wisdom in the sense that they know the game. They've worked hard. They've studied hard. They know the game. They know how to play well together and to interlock as a team. And they cooperate. They're not just trying to showboat, not just trying to show off for individual glory, but they cooperate for the good of the team. Very often that team is going to win, even if the other team has stronger, better athletes. Connection tends to win over strength. That's not only true on the field of sports, but it's true in society. That as people have connected and cooperated and acted in wisdom and love, they tend to survive better than individuals, societies that are divided, even if they have their own strengths. Another reason why I think this is really possible is if you look at history, we really have been on a slow march towards a more caring, compassionate culture. Now, I know there's a lot of problems. I know there's a lot of bad things in the world. But if we look at the long haul, the long picture, we are on a slow march towards wider circles of care and compassion. For instance, there was a time in most places in the world where slavery was considered normal. It's hard to find that now. It exists, but most places in the world do not consider slavery normal. Are there individuals that still think slavery should be around? Yes, but we don't listen to those people. As societies, we have moved to a place that we no longer see slavery as a normal part of society. There's a wider circle of caring than there once was. Increasingly, in many societies, we see women not as property as they were in the ancient world, but as equals, that women and men are equals. That was not considered normal in the ancient world in most places. There are places in the world it's still not considered. And are there problems with equality? Yes. But increasingly, we are seeing wider circles of care and compassion, understanding that we're all in this together, that we see one another as equals. Things like child labor, things like public executions for entertainment, those things are not really part of societies anymore, most societies. Does it exist? Yes. But it's not as prevalent. Many places in the world, this is just not considered to be something we do anymore. That's not what we consider civilized society. My point is, we have made some progress towards love, wisdom, and cooperation. Is it slow, painfully slow? Yes. But it does exist. And so if we're aware of that, and we intentionally move that forward, even in our own families, our own communities, then we contribute to that slow march and maybe even speed it up a little. In a world where communication is much faster than it once was, in a world that moves faster than it ever has before, maybe we speed that up and move towards those circles of caring and compassion even more quickly. And another aspect of this, people may push back and say, sure, you can pick out some things that are happening that are positive, but look at all the negative. Look at all the bad things. Look at all the crises that we are dealing with right now in the world, in our nation, in society. Look at all the bad stuff. And I would agree. There's a lot of bad stuff. I would also point out that historically, some of the greatest awakenings have come after a crisis. We can look and see some real crises around us. But historically, some of the greatest awakenings have happened after a crisis. It becomes an opportunity to reevaluate. When we come through things like wars and pandemics and disasters, think about a natural disaster that hits a certain region. Don't we see so much good coming out in those times? That's when we see neighbors helping neighbors. That's when we see churches and organizations and businesses stepping up to do good in their community. It feels more natural to do good after a crisis. It's a shame that it takes a crisis to get us moving, but at least we do that. And it feels good to see neighbors helping neighbors after a natural disaster. It feels good to see businesses contributing, to see churches helping, to see organizations opening their doors to help those in need. There is a onslaught, a real push to do good after a crisis. And so when we look at all the bad stuff in the world and we say, look at this as evidence of how bad the world is, we can also turn that around and say, yes, we're not going to deny the crises. We're not going to deny the bad stuff. But we're also going to say that that can bring about an even greater awakening. And that's what we need to do. We need to be the messengers that say love and wisdom and cooperation, connection are needed because of this crisis, because of the bad stuff we see in the world. So this is not just empty idealism. This is not even a destination. It's a guide. We're not going to create some imaginary utopia and say that we need to try to create this. Utopia doesn't exist, but we can use love and wisdom and connection and cooperation as a guide toward a better society. And the way we create that is using it as a guide for our families, for our churches, for our businesses, our organizations, our neighborhoods. When we do that, we are moving closer to that moment, to that time, that we can actually say that we are reaching that incredible point when we finally decide that love, wisdom, and cooperation are worth more than dominance, fear, and division, and we act accordingly. And that's my thoughts this week as we are looking to build the healthy, happy, thriving relationships that we all want, that we need, and that we deserve. I want to thank all the folks associated with the Learning Love Foundation that bring you this message each week. Go to learninglovefoundation.com. You'll see all the programs that are available. You'll also see easy links there to buy my book, Learning Love, Building a Life That Matters, and Healthy Relationships That Last. As we sign off this week, I want to thank my producer, Abby Graves of Abby Graves Productions, and I want to thank all of you for listening. Until next week, love well, everyone.